Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April Community Webcast. My name is Caitlin Lamb. I'm a Product Marketing Manager for CA Agile Central. And this month we have a great topic. We have Matt Gorbsky here. He's a Product Manager for CA Agile Central. And he will be walking us through our new investments feature, which will be in open beta sometime next week. Just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, please utilize the Q&A tab to the right of your screen. We will be saving questions for the very end. And also for your colleagues who weren't able to join this webcast live today, we will be recording this webcast, and the recording will be available on the CA Agile Central community within a few business days. So with that said, I will pass it on over to Matt.
Awesome. Thanks, Caitlin. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Gorbsky. I'm, as Caitlin mentioned, a product manager with Agile Central. I've also got on the line and here with me Andrea and Pam, and they're product owners that have really carried a lot of this investment work through to what we have now. And we're all here to answer your questions and talk through this and help you out in any way we can. So what we're talking about today are the investments. If you are a private beta user for our funding increments or have heard us talk about that in the past, this is the new name for what was known as funding increments. We think investments makes a lot more sense in terms of what this feature actually represents to you as our customers and to where we think this is going to go in the product in the future. So with that, our investments are cross-cutting views of funded work, and it's regardless of the project or release. So what we mean by this is typically when we see work getting created, there's oftentimes a funding component that we don't necessarily capture within Agile Central. Sometimes it's managed outside the tool, sometimes it's managed in various ways through our customers. And what we're trying to capture is the work that's associated to a specific fund or investment that gets created at the business level. So in a typical environment, within a workspace, you've typically got multiple projects that can have sub-projects. We've got initiatives broken down into features and then stories and tasks and all that below it. So this is a typical workspace structure. What might happen is certain features within that workspace could be tied to providing specific value or trying to achieve a specific business outcome. And that work gets funded specifically to solve that problem. When that hits the delivery side, it gets split up across the different projects, across different teams, and across different trains, delivered across multiple releases, tied to different milestones. There's all kinds of ways in which that work gets spread out across the entire organization. So what we're trying to do is create a way to capture all of that work that's represented by the initial investment. So the Agile Central investment is a way to associate that work with the dollars that fund the work going into it. So what are we trying to achieve as a business outcome? How much are we willing to invest in it? And then tracking where that work actually ends up. Another way to view this might be across different trains or programs and across multiple releases. We might have the same concept where there's multiple features that get divided across the trains and across the releases, and we can now associate all of that work to an investment. So what can we track and why would we want to do this? At high level, and now at a business view of that work, we can see how much of that's actually been completed, how much of it's even been scheduled. If we are expecting certain functionality to be delivered and a percentage of work hasn't even been scheduled yet, that's an important piece of information for a business owner to be aware of. We can track the time elapsed, so typically investments have a period of time for which you're funding the work, and we can track the overall time that's elapsed of the time period. And we can also view the dependencies. This has been a top request overall for both delivery teams and the business to see what work are we dependent on to deliver the functionality that we're trying to get to. We are, as Caitlin mentioned, expecting to get this out next week. We're targeting Monday the 26th. Sorry. A couple key points to mention before we get into the demo. Access to this feature must be granted per user by a subscription admin. So that's when we turn this on Monday, no one's really going to see anything. Unless you're in the open beta currently, you are not going to just automatically have the new investments show up in your navigation. You have to actually have a subscription admin go in and enable this per user. The reason for that is we are dealing with financial information, and the expectation is that not everyone should have access to view and edit all of your investments. The investments are workspace scoped, which means the investments can span the entire workspace. You can include any work item or with any portfolio item at the lowest level, and we'll get into that, into an investment. But that also means that anyone that has access to the investments get access to all of the investments within that workspace. So you can see the full list and also have edit rights to all of those. So it's an important thing to just kind of get into as we open this up. We are interested in your feedback as to what levels of permissions we would like to you'd like to see in our roadmap. That is one of the big areas that we're going to be tackling, is how to create some more granular permissions around who has access to view, edit, and modify the work inside of an investment. The other point that we can get into, we can talk about, is the fact that this is going to be a future integration point. So there's work being done with the Agile, the CA PPM tool to modify the existing integration to basically allow you to point a PPM project into a Agile Central investment rather than just a portfolio item like an initiative. So you've got a much more flexible container to collect the work that you're tracking at the financial level. So with that, I'll jump into the demo. So these are our investments. You'll notice one thing to point out, I am using the new nav, so if you don't have the new navigation enabled, which I highly recommend everybody doing by going up to the new features and enabling personalized navigation. If you haven't done that yet, it's a really awesome feature. And if you are on the old navigation, you'll find the investments under the portfolio menu item. So our investments currently have got 2 in here. And at a real quick glance, I can start seeing things like when we were planning the investment to start and end, how much has been completed based on our plan estimates, how much time has elapsed, and how much of that work has been scheduled, and what our overall funded amount is going to be. So I can see that we had a Q4 investment that is now over, but we didn't actually get everything done. We didn't even get everything planned. So I can start drilling into that and understanding what happened, what's remaining, what work do we need to carry over, create a new investment to capture. So within the investment, we are using our QDP panel to get to the details. I can go in and manage the name, the color. We've got the start date, end date, and amount. These are the fields that are required: the name, start date, end date, and a dollar amount. We can include a description and notes. And the other thing to point out is this also does support custom fields. So you can do some interesting things, like couple this with one of the new custom field types around a user, a custom user type, I believe it's called. So I can actually associate a business owner to this and choose from a list of existing users within Agile Central and associate them to this and get completely custom with how we actually use the investment capability. We've got the collection within the investment, so I can see all of the features that are associated to this investment. And I can see that one of my features was never actually scheduled. So it's got I don't have a release on feature 5. I can drill down and see that these stories were not completed in support of our user profile work. So at a high level, I can understand what work is going into delivering the value that we're trying to within the investment. I can get quick glances of their overall status. And this is based on our work views. If you haven't also used that, I highly recommend that capability. But we can modify these columns to customize the view that you're trying to get to. So if you're trying to track the work you can tweak these columns to show you more of the status. If you're trying to track the teams, you can focus in on the projects and the teams that are actually executing on this. If you're looking for the value or the priority, all of that can be in here. So you can adjust these columns to match the view that you're trying to create. And then if I go back to my view of our investments, here's a view of an investment that's currently underway. So we've got about 45% of the work completed, about 75% of that scheduled, and we're only 21% through. So I think we're doing pretty good here. You can drill into the work and see what the status of all these things are. There's some work that hasn't been scheduled yet, so I can follow up on those actions. And the other nice thing is I've got a view of the dependencies at the feature level of all of the items that are incorporated inside of our investment. So for all of these features that are in my investment, we are dependent on these other features. And I can track their status, identify whether or not they actually have a date scheduled. So these are representing risk to my investment at this point because I'm dependent on work that hasn't actually been scheduled yet. And then if I wanted to create a new investment, this is the same interface that we use throughout the rest of the tool. I'm sorry, the watches, I'm on a dev environment at the moment for this demo, so our watches aren't enabled, so that little red pop-up is just going to keep coming up. So I can create a new investment. We can assign the colors, same like in other areas. We can say this is going to be investment starting May, going through the end of August. We're going to fund $500,000 for this effort, and it's going to be used to drive we're going to create new business capabilities. That new investment shows up on my list. And when I go into the collection, I can actually start associating new work. So the way we do this is by choosing which features we want to incorporate into this investment. We can filter by project. I can choose the investments, or choose the features that I want to associate. And that work now shows up within the investment. We can drill down to see what stories have been created and associated to the features that we're including, and basically start tracking that investment from the beginning through. So as work gets added, as these features get broken down into stories, we can kind of look at this view of the work from a business perspective of what is it going to take to deliver this piece of value, and use this as that virtual container of tracking all that, tying that to a dollar amount, and being able to aggregate all of that so I get kind of a really high-level view of what our portfolio looks like. So at a really high level, I mean, that's the capability that we're addressing. I will get into the PPM integration because I think there's people on this call that might be interested in that. So currently within PPM, and I'm going to go through this very quickly because I know this is an Agile Central discussion, but right now we have the projects in PPM have tasks. Those typically relate to a single initiative tied to a project, where the tasks represent the features in Agile Central. What the investment allows us to do is now span multiple initiatives. So your project hierarchy and your portfolio hierarchy no longer determine what can be tracked within PPM. When this work is delivered, and this is something that is currently in development on the PPM side, so this is not currently available, but will be available fairly soon, will allow you to create a PPM project and track work across the different hierarchies within Agile Central. So that's a nice integration point that'll be updated once both the 15.4 plus release is out in PPM, and as soon as this is open to everyone, which should be next week. So that's the demo. This is fairly brief, but happy to dive into the questions at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Hey, Matt, this is, I'm sorry, somebody else have a question?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Matt, this is Nick Eisey. So the investment, at the bank, we've got at least in our workspace, we've got a portfolio item called a theme. And everything you showed, like we typically, we have themes, initiatives, features, and stories. So everything you just showed, other than the monetary value, I can get using things, right? I can expand, have a theme, and I can have multiple initiatives to it, as long as people have access. So I had that question. And secondly, well, let's do that one first. I've got a couple other questions, but I want to give other people time too.
So I think you kind of broke up part of that. Let me restate your question to make sure I'm understanding. It sounds like you're saying, why couldn't I just use the portfolio hierarchy that exists, such as a theme, to collect all of the initiatives and the work inside of that? Is that correct?
Yeah, that is what we're doing today, actually.
Okay.
So how does the investment, other than having a field with $1.5 million in it, what does that really help me with?
Yeah, for a lot of our customers, the portfolio hierarchy doesn't often represent enough scope to capture all of the work that goes into a business investment. So if you're able to collect everything at that highest level portfolio item level, that's great. We encourage that type of behavior. We're trying to drive towards that. But in general, a lot of our customers find that when you look at what the business is trying to accomplish and what work actually needs to be associated to that, things typically don't cleanly roll up to that single higher level portfolio item. You might have multiple. And especially when you get into multiple trains and multiple programs and trying to track the work across different platforms, things get very messy very quickly. So part of what we're trying to achieve with this investment feature is the ability to collect all that work from the various parts within the workspace and give you that nice clean view of all of that work rolled up. If you're able to do that through portfolio items, that's awesome. Then the investments provide the additional dollar amount to track that. And when we allow, right now we currently limit what you can add to an investment to the lowest level portfolio item. So currently that's the features in our setup here. When we expand that out to include higher level portfolio items, then you can just create an investment, link your theme, and then have all the same benefits at that same level.
Okay, so I've got two more questions. So I didn't see, though, how much of the funding I've used up and how much I have remaining. I don't know that it's safe to assume that percentage of stories complete, translates exactly is proportional to money spent. I didn't see anywhere that said, okay, of the 1.5 million, we're halfway through. Have I eaten up half my investment or what? Or maybe I've had 3 whole trains working on this investment, and I mean, I was only expecting half of the trains to work on the investment or whatever. So does it have that capability?
At this point right now, this is basically a brand new feature for us. So it's currently just the static value. We do have plans to include the ability to allow you to burn that down and track your spend over time. We do have plans on the roadmap to look at linking this to other PPM tools, the CA PPM, and create a connection there so that your dollars actually connect and get updated and might become read-only in Agile Central, and you can kind of view the burn down there. This is also the great feedback for us as to how you would like to see this used. As we release this to open beta, the idea is that this is something that we are, still building out. This is definitely not finished for us. And what we're trying to do at this point and through the open beta process is put this out there to a broader set of customers to collect the feedback on what you'd like to see in there. So I'm taking that as a feature request And,
well, actually, it's not. My request would be to align it more to the state, right? Because to me, this is aligning it to project management, waterfall, coupling of dollars to scope. Whereas in the scaled Agile, not just SAFe, but LESS and Nexus and others, they're advocating, funding the value stream, funding the train, and not coupling funding to features and initiatives and projects, those kinds of things. So it seems kind of a step back to me of where I think we want to go in simplifying our funding model. So I'm really concerned that having this kind of capability would, even though it's in its infancy now, would lead us in a direction that doesn't help us.
So that is also part of the roadmap. Funding a team is definitely where we see a lot of our customers trying to get to, and we see that this investment concept could be a step in that direction. So we're trying to move towards that, and again, this is an early stage, beta. I think that's something that we can definitely, and I'd love to have this conversation as a follow-up too, to dig into that a little bit further. About how we would support more agile funding approaches to support the different methodologies in use.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to have that conversation with you if you'd like, and if anybody else would care to join. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your questions. And thanks, Matt. I see that we have a bunch of questions coming through the Q&A. I'll just give Matt and Andrea and Pam a minute to just review these questions. But in the meantime, I just want to promote to all of you our monthly customer newsletter. I've gotten a bunch of requests from customers and Agile Central users who really enjoy these monthly webcasts and really getting this time with our product team and customer success teams educating us on these topics. If you sign up for the Agile Central monthly newsletter, you will get the first news of these monthly webcasts, including the new topics that we'll be presenting on, as well as product updates and offerings for Agile Academy, and just a bunch of great resources that will help you in your Agile Central journey. For those of you who aren't already subscribed to this monthly newsletter, I encourage you to do so. You can do so by going to the Agile Central community, and right on the front page, to the upper right, there's a chip for the Agile Central newsletter with the link that says subscribe here. And once you subscribe, you'll be opted in to receive these monthly customer newsletters. And also for those of you who are looking to advance your skills with Agile certification classes or learning more about CA Agile Central, we do have a bunch of Agile Academy offerings. You can view the full schedule at agileacademy.ca.com to learn about our different SAFe classes. A couple of our really popular courses are the Certified Scrum Master course and Certified Product Owner course. And the good thing is we do have a coupon code for all of you on the call today. If you use the coupon code COM20 in all caps, you can save 20% off your course registration. So that's just a great resource for anyone looking to advance your skills. So with that said, it looks like we got some more questions rolling in, but I'll pass it on over to Matt, Andrea, and Pam to address these questions.
Sure. So there's a couple questions about access. So is this approach just for beta? And I'm assuming that's the workspace admin per user having to check that box. I can say that currently that is the approach we are taking for the beta, just to get this out there and allow some ability to restrict access. We do have plans to get much more granular with who can create these, who can view them, who can edit. And I think there was another question specifically around that. So yes, we do have plans to address the permissions and allow you to kind of, my hope is that we're able to create more of a role-based access control that kind of says who has the ability to modify these and view the dollars associated. So yes, limiting the scope to what an authorized user can edit. I think that would be part of the permissions there. That was the kind of question that came in. Do you want anything to add?
The permissions?
Yeah. Okay. There's a question around timekeeping, and I'd be really interested to follow up on what your thoughts are around timekeeping. The question is there any timekeeping feature added which gets associated with an investment? At this point, we are not planning on tracking or making a connection to the time entry itself, although that is something that as we look at where this could go, I'd really like to understand what you're trying to get at with that. So I think we can have a follow-up conversation, and I will definitely take that as an action item to have that conversation with the person that asked that question. And then there's a general question about whether or not this could be used without the dollar investment, and whether or not it's configurable, could you hide it, or at least not require it? I think that's an interesting question. So this investment piece for us is, and you'll probably notice some similarities to our milestones. We were calling it internally a slice. So this is a cross-cutting collection or virtual container, as I heard one customer refer to it as, of work, and it does span the workspace. So I would be really interested to hear what specifically you'd be trying to use this for without the dollar field. There's a question about other currencies. At the moment, we are only supporting the dollar field, although we do have plans for the near future to expand that out to include international currencies. So my apologies for starting with the dollar. That's just where we had to start, and we do have some stories in our backlog to address that fairly quickly. A question about whether or not this is providing the ability to track work across workspaces. I think the short answer there is yes. Oh, I'm sorry, across workspaces. No, across teams, across programs, across the releases, that's what we're trying to provide here. The boundaries of those work items are within the workspace that you're creating the investments in. But,
A single workspace, yes.
Is this feature something that can be used to capture business objectives and business value rankings? I would love to have a follow-up conversation around business objectives and how you're tracking those, because that is actually an area of current research for us. We're prototyping some concepts around that. I think that plays very nicely into the investment concept and into where we're trying to take all of this. That said, within the open beta period, within the open beta functionality, you could probably create that on your own through custom fields and create some of that as an experiment. And I'd be more than happy to follow up on that conversation to see how you might set that up and what it would look like and how that works for you. So there's a question about the CAPPM and timekeeping in CAPPM, using that to burn down against the funding amount in Agile Central. That is part of the open and ongoing discussions that we're having with PPM about how to create better connections between our two systems overall and create just better integrations and better experiences for everyone. So that is on the list, and I can't address the specifics around how we might do that or what that's going to look like exactly at this point. But we are addressing that. And do you have any other thoughts, Pam and Andrea? A few more questions coming in, so I'm just taking a minute to read those. Could the investments feature be used for capitalization tracking? That's a super interesting question. I think, it really depends on the organization, so it's hard for me to answer that exactly. Excuse me. I think it's possible to flag the work and use this as a way to potentially create that collection of what you are trying to capitalize. What you do with it from there, I think, is definitely up to you as an organization. You can add custom fields to set flags on certain features or stories. You can add a custom field to the investment itself. Excuse me, coming out down with a cold.
I think another question that has come up, so currently the investments are limited to just the lowest level portfolio item when it comes to association, and we are investigating how to open that up further. There's specific roll-up logic that we need to solve for, so we are aware of that limitation and are looking to solve that. I don't know if that was highlighted in the demo. I wanted to touch on that because we have received those questions from our limited beta customers. So the goal is to open that up in the future and go lowest level portfolio item and other levels in your hierarchy to take a work item and create that association.
Awesome. Question about KPIs against the investment. Again, that's I think coming back to the research that we're doing and the prototypes and the concepts that we're developing around outcomes and objectives. And specifically, we have KPIs for those. So I think that'd be really interesting for us to look at associating KPI against an investment. I think that may end up playing more of an investment is what you're going to commit to achieving an outcome, and then creating a relationship between all these things of what you're trying to do, how you know you've accomplished that through the KPIs, what you're willing to invest to achieve that outcome, and then tracking the work and the relationships between all of those things and being able to manage and track to that. Is where kind of we see this all going. So that's an interesting question. I really like that. And I would definitely follow up with people asking about that and anyone else that's interested in participating in that research that's going on right now. I'd love to hear your thoughts as to where that could go. I think that's the end of the questions.
Great. Well, this wraps up our Q&A portion. Just so everyone knows, we have everyone's questions on file. So if we weren't able to get to any of your to any specific questions, or if we're going to continue on the conversation, Matt will be in touch with you via email. I just wanted to thank Matt, Andrea, and Pam for talking with us on this webcast this month. I just wanted to remind everyone that this webcast will be recorded and available on the Agile Central community within a few business days, in case you want to rewatch this webcast or share it with your colleagues. And also, please join us in future months of these monthly webcasts, where we'll be presenting on even more exciting topics. But thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join today, and we look forward to seeing you in future months. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.